Okay, Wildcat, so we're looking at 5.5, finding complex solutions of quadratic equations, assignment tutorial. Solve the equation by completing the square. State whether the solutions are real or non-real. Okay, so we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. Okay, and then we have x squared plus 4x equals -1. Okay, now we need to complete the square, so we're going to add 4 divided by 2 squared. But what you add to one side, you have to do to the other. So that's plus 4 divided by 2 squared. Okay, so then we have x squared plus 4x plus 4 divided by 2 is 2 squared equals -1 plus 2 squared. Okay, so then we have x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals -1 plus 4. Okay. All right. Now we're going to factor this equals plus 3, and you don't have to put the plus, so it's just 3. Oh, that's it. Try to write that again. 3. All right. Now we know x and x makes x squared. Now we ask ourselves, what do you multiply to give you 4 combined to be 4? Well, the answer to that is 2 times 2 equals 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So that's plus 2 plus 2. Okay. This is x plus 2 squared equals 3. We're going to take the plus or minus square root of both sides. Okay. This cancels, so you're left with x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Subtract 2 from both sides. So your answer is x equals -2 plus or minus the square root of 3. Okay, so then the two real solutions are -2 plus the square root of 3 and -2 minus the square root of 3. All right, let's move on to question 2. Okay, question 2 of 16. Solve the equation by completing the square. State whether the solutions are real or non-real. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 8 from both sides. Okay, so then you have x squared plus 2x equals -8. Okay, we're going to complete the square, so we're going to add 2 divided by 2 squared. But what you add to one side, you have to add to the other. So plus 2 divided by 2 squared. And that might be hard to read, so let me rewrite that. Okay, so then that's x squared plus 2x plus 2 divided by 2 is 1, so that's 1 squared equals -8 plus 1 squared. Okay, well that's x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals -8 plus 1. Well, now we factor this. You know x and x makes x squared. Well, we ask ourselves, what do you multiply to give you 1 combined to be 2? Well, 1 times 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So that's x plus 1, x plus 1. Well, x plus 1 times x plus 1 is x plus 1 squared equals -7. Okay, take the square root of both sides, plus or minus. So then that cancels, you're left with x plus 1 equals, now the square root of a negative number is I, so that's plus or minus I square roots of 7. Subtract 1 from both sides. So then x equals negative 1 plus or minus I square roots of 7. Okay, so the two non-real solutions are negative 1 plus I square roots of 7 and negative 1 minus I square roots of 7. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, question 3 of 16. Solve the equation by completing the square. State whether the solutions are real or non-real. So we have x squared minus 7x equals negative 25. We already have this number on the right, so now we complete the square. So that's plus 7 divided by 3 squared plus 7 divided by 3 squared. Okay, so then this is x squared minus 7x plus, now in the example I kept it as a decimal, but on the assignment they want it as a fraction, so that's plus 49 divided by 9 equals negative 25, and actually write it a little better. It's not wrong the way it's written, but if we write it like this, it's going to make it easier to work out the problem. Okay, minus 2 plus 49 divided by 9. Okay, so then we can factor this. That's parentheses x equals, now to add these we have to have the same denominator, so we need to multiply negative 2 divided by 1 times 9 divided by 9 plus 49 divided by 9. Okay, so then here, well, we know the factors pretty simple. It's plus 7 thirds plus 7 thirds. Okay, now this becomes x plus 7 thirds squared equals negative 18 divided by 9 plus 49 divided by 9. Okay, we're going to take the square root plus or minus of both sides. Okay, this cancels. You're left with x plus 7 thirds equals plus or minus the square root. Let's go ahead and simplify this. Okay, so we can do the numerators, negative 18 plus 49, which would be 31 divided by 9. Okay, now we can take the square root of the numerator and the denominator, so that's x plus 7 thirds equals plus or minus the square root of 31 divided by the square root of 9. Well, we can't take the square root of 31, but the square root of 9 is 3. So this is x plus 7 thirds equals plus or minus the square root of 31 divided by 3. Last step, subtract 7 thirds from both sides. So x equals negative 7 divided by 3 plus or minus the square root of 31 divided by 3. So the two real solutions are negative 7 divided by 3 plus the square root of 31 divided by 3, and negative 7 divided by 3 minus the square root of 31 divided by 3. All right, let's go and look at the next question. All right, question 4 of 16. Solve the equation by completing the square. State whether the solutions are real or non-real. Okay, so we already have this number on the right, so now we complete the square. Okay, so that's plus -6 divided by 2 squared plus -6 divided by 2 squared. Okay, so then that's all right. So this problem actually, before we move on, and you take a step back, is you can't complete the square unless this term is a 1. So we actually need to divide a 5 out from both terms. So be careful with that, because that's an easy mistake you can see to overlook, okay? But I actually think it was a typo. So I'm going to take out the 5. Okay. All right. So then that's x squared minus 6x. So plus -6 divided by 2 squared plus -6 divided by 2 squared. Okay. All right. So then that's x squared minus 6x. -6 divided by 2 is -3 squared equals 8 plus -3 squared. Okay. So then that's x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 8 plus 9. Okay, so 2 parentheses. 8 plus 9 is 17. Now, this is easy, x and x, and then that right there is the number that goes right here, x minus 3, x minus 3. So then that's x minus 3 squared equals 17. Take this plus or minus square root of both sides. So then that cancels. You're left with x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 17. Add 3 to both sides. So x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 17. Okay, so the two real solutions are 3 plus the square root of 17 and 3 minus the square root of 17. All right, let's take a look at the next question. All right. Solve the equation by completing the square. State whether the solutions are real or non-real. All right. Now, first off, you don't want a negative in front of the x squared. So we're going to divide everything by -1. You have to divide everything because of the equation, okay? Now, a negative divided by negative is a positive, so that's x squared plus 4x plus 6 equals 0. Now, we can subtract 6 from both sides. So you have x squared plus 4x equals -6. Okay, now we complete the square. So plus 4 divided by 2 squared plus 4 divided by 2 squared. Okay, so then that's x squared plus 4x plus 2 squared equals -6 plus 2 squared. So then that's x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals -6 plus 4. Well, this one's easy. We already did this one. X plus 2 equals -2. This is x plus 2 squared equals -2. Okay, take the square root plus or minus both sides, so then that cancels. You get x plus 2 equals, the square root of negative 2 is I, so that's plus minus I square roots of 2. Subtract 2 from both sides. X equals negative 2 plus or minus I square roots of 2. All right, so the two non-real solutions are negative 2 plus I square roots of 2 and negative 2 minus I square roots of 2. All right, let's go and take a look at the next question. All right, question 6 of 16. Without solving the equation, state the number of solutions and whether they are real or non-real. Okay. All right. So what we need to do is use the discriminant. So this is A, this is B, this is C. Okay. The discriminant is B squared minus 4AC. Okay. So then the discriminant equals B squared, which is 6 squared minus 4 times A, which is negative 19, and C is 15. And let's go ahead and use Desmos to get that, okay? Okay, so scientific calculator, 6 squared minus 4 times parentheses negative 19. Oh, my parentheses negative 19 parentheses 15 is 1,176. Okay, now we know from our notes that since the discriminant is equal to 1,176, which is greater than 0, okay, so the discriminant is 1,176. Because the discriminant is positive, the equation has two real solutions. Okay. All right, let's take a look at question number 7. Okay, question 7 of 16. Without solving the equation, state the number of solutions and whether they are real or non-real. Okay, so first off, we need to subtract 4 from both sides. So now we have negative 1x squared, which that's your a value, minus 1 divided by 2x, which that's your b value, minus 4 equals 0, which is your c value. Okay, now the discriminant equals b squared minus 4ac. So d equals negative 1 divided by 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 1, times c, which is negative 4. And let's go ahead and put that in the calculator. Okay, so parentheses, negative 1 divided by 2 squared minus 4 times parentheses negative 1 parentheses negative 4. So that's negative 15.75. Okay. So the discriminant, now, and I wrote this to remind myself that they're going to want that in a fraction form. So using Desmos isn't going to work for that, okay? So what we're going to have to do is work this out algebraically. Okay, negative 1 squared is 1/4. Okay, minus, now a negative 4 times a negative 1 is a positive 4, times a negative 4 is a negative 16. So that's minus 16. Okay, divided by 1. Now, in order to subtract these, we need to multiply this by 4 divided by 4. Okay, so the discriminant is equal to 1/4 minus 16 times 4 is, and we just use a calculator here, 16 times 4 is 64. So minus 64 divided by 4, which 1 minus 64 is negative 63 divided by 4. Okay, so the discriminant is negative 63 divided by 4, which is negative. Which, almost forgot, the discriminant equals negative 63 divided by 4, which is less than 0. Since it's less than 0, we know it's negative, and that is 2 non-real solutions. Okay, all right, let's take a look at the next question. All right, question 8 of 16. Without solving the equation, state the number of solutions and whether they are real or non-real. Okay, first off, we need to add 12x to both sides. So we have 4x squared plus 9 plus 12x. Well, you always want to write these in order. So let's rewrite this as 4x squared plus 12x plus 9 equals 0. It always goes x squared, then x, and then constant. Okay, so this is the a value, this is the b value, and this is the c value. Okay, we know that d, the discriminant, is equal to b squared minus 4 times ac. Okay, so then the discriminant equals b, which is 12 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times 9. Okay, and we can put that into decimals. Okay, so 12 squared minus 4 times 9, which is 0. So this equals 0. When the discriminant equals 0, so the discriminant is 0. Because the discriminant is 0, the equation has one real solution. Okay? Let's take a look at the next question. All right, question 9 of 16. Solve the equation using the quadratic formula. So first off, this is A, this is B, this is C. The quadratic formula says x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root. Now, whenever you have a negative b value, it needs to be in parentheses doing squared. Negative 4 squared minus 4 times the a value, which is 1, and the c value is 21. Divided by 2 times the a value is 1. So x equals a negative times a negative is a positive, so 4 plus or minus the square root. Let's go ahead and put the discriminant in decimals. So parentheses, negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 21 is negative 68. Okay, divided by 2. Now, we need to see if we can reduce the 68. So, let me go to Desmos, graph, and table, function table, and I'm going to delete these, and we need to find all the combinations to make negative 68. So we're going to do negative 68 divided by x, and we're looking for a perfect square, so 1. 4 works, okay, but let's try 9. 9 doesn't work. 16 doesn't work. 25 doesn't work. 36 doesn't work. 49, 64. You can pretty much see that that's not going to work. So 4 times negative 6 or 17 will work. So we're going to write this as x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 4, or we can actually make that the negative 4. Negative 4 times 17, okay, divided by 2. So then x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 times the square root of 17 divided by 2. Well, x equals 4 plus or minus, the square root of negative 4 is 2i times the square root of 17 divided by 2. Well, we divide 2 here and here. So x equals 4 divided by 2 is 2, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1i square root of 17. So the two solutions are 2 plus I square root of 17 and 2 minus I square root of 17. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. Okay, question 10 of 16. Solve the equation using the quadratic formula. Okay, so this is the A value, this is the B value, and this is the C value. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times ac divided by 2a. Okay, so then x equals negative b, so that's negative 32 plus or minus the square root of parentheses negative 32 squared minus 4 times 1 times 81 divided by 2 times 1. So x equals positive 32 plus or minus the square root. Let's go ahead and put that in decimals, okay? So, and we're only going to put in the discriminant. So parentheses, negative 32 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8 is 992. Oh, times 81. 700. Ooh, almost made a mistake. So just a lesson on being careful on putting the numbers in correctly. Okay. So divided by 2. So then x equals 32 plus or minus. Let's see if we can reduce 700 by a perfect square. So quick trick here is we can, not trick so much, but save some time, is change this to 700. And so 4 works, but it looks like 25 can go further. Okay, 64 doesn't work, those don't work. Now the next one is, I believe, 81. That doesn't work. 100. Ooh, 100 brings you down to 7. We know 7 is prime, so that's going to work. Okay, so then that's the square root of 100, and we can save ourselves a step because you know you're going to multiply them separately, times the square root of 7 divided by 2. Okay, so then x equals 32 divided by 2 plus or minus square root of 100 is 10 divided by 2 times the square root of 7. Okay, so then x equals 16 plus or minus 5 square roots of 7. Okay, the solutions are 16 plus 5 square roots of 7 and x equals 16 minus 5 square roots of 7. Okay, let's look at the next question. Okay, solve the equation using the quadratic formula. We first need to subtract negative 1 squared from both sides. So that's negative 1x squared plus 1x plus 1 equals 0. This is your a value, this is your b value, this is your c value. Okay, so x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times ac divided by 2a. Okay, so then x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times 1 divided by 2 times 1. Okay, so then x equals negative 1 plus or minus, let's go ahead and plug that into Desmos. One squared minus, oh, not two minuses, minus 4 times parentheses negative 1 times 1 is 5. Well, we know that's 5 is a prime number, so that's reduced as much as it can be, divided by 2. So the solutions are negative 1 divided by 2 plus the square root of 5 divided by 2, and negative 1 divided by 2 minus the square root of 5 divided by 2. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. All right, question 12 of 16. Solve the equation using the quadratic formula. Okay, so we're going to subtract 4x from both sides. So then you have 2x squared minus 4x plus 7 equals 0. This is your a value, this is your b value, this is your c value. We know that x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so then x equals negative b, which is negative negative 4, plus or minus the square root of parentheses negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 7 divided by 2 times 2. Okay, so x equals positive 4 plus or minus the square root. Let's go ahead and put that in Desmos. So parentheses negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 7, which is negative 40, divided by 4. Now we're going to see if we can simplify the square root. So let's come over here and change this to negative 40. Now 1 works, 4 works. Well, let's see if we can go further. Looks like the farthest you can go is 4 negative 10. Okay. So that's the square root of 4 times the square root of negative 10 divided by 4. So then that x equals 4 divided by 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2 fourths times, now square root of negative number is imaginary, so that's the square root of 10i. Okay, now 4 divided by 4 reduces to be 1 plus 2/4 is 1/2 I square root of 10. Okay, so then that's 1 plus 1 divided by 2 I square root of 10 and 1 minus 1 divided by 2 I square root of 10. All right, let's take a look at the next question. Okay. All right. All right, answer the question by finding the equation and determine whether the solutions of the equations are real or non-real. A gardener has 100 feet of fencing to put around a rectangular garden. The function A of W equals 50W minus W squared gives the garden area A in square feet for any width W in feet. Does the gardener have enough fence for the area of the garden to be 1,600 feet? All right, so the equation can be used as negative W squared plus 50W minus 1,600 equals 0. Okay, so that's your equation. Negative 1W squared plus 50W minus 1,600, okay, equals 0. Now, this is your A value, this is your B value, this is your C value. Now, to find that discriminant value, the discriminant equals B squared minus 4AC, okay? So D equals 50 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 1,600. So let's put that into Desmos. So 50 squared minus 4 times parentheses negative 1 parentheses negative 1,600, which is negative 3,900. So the discriminant equals negative 3,900, which is that value right there. Okay, so the equation has 2. Now, because remember, this is less than 0, it has 2 non-real solutions. So the gardener does not have enough fencing to enclose an area of 1,600 square feet. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. Okay, all right. Answer the question by finding an equation and determining whether the solutions of the equation are real or non-real. A golf ball is hit with an initial velocity of 68 feet per second. The function h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 68t miles the height h in feet of the golf ball at the time t in seconds. Does the golf ball reach a height of 60 feet? Okay, so our equation is negative 16t squared plus 68t minus 60 equals 0. Now, this is your A value, this is your B value, this is your C value. Okay, now the discriminant, to find that, we know is B squared minus 4AC. So the discriminant equals 68 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times negative 60. Okay, so let's put that into Desmos. So 68 squared minus 4 times parentheses negative 16 parentheses negative 60 is 784. Okay. Now, because the discriminant is 784, that's greater than 0. That means it's positive. So there's 2 real solutions. So the golf ball does reach a height of 60 feet. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next question. All right. Answer the question by finding an equation and determining whether the solutions of the equations are real or non-real. As a decoration for a school dance, the student council creates a parabolic arch with the balloons attached to it for students to walk through as they enter the dance. The shape of the arch is modeled by the equations y equals x parentheses 4.75 minus x, where x and y are measured in feet, where the origin is at one end of the arch. Can a student who is 6 feet 6 inches tall walk through the arch without ducking? All right, so our equation is negative 1x squared plus 4.75x minus 6.5 equal to 0. Okay, now this is your a value, this is your b value, and this is your c value. So we know the discriminant equals b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so the discriminant equals b squared, which is 4.75 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 1, times c, which is negative 6.5. Okay, so let's put that into decimals. Okay, so that's 4.75 squared minus 4 times parentheses negative 1 parentheses negative 6.5, which is negative 3.4375. Okay. Now we know that the discriminant equals negative 3.4375 is less than 0, so we know it has two non-real solutions. So a student that is 6 feet 6 inches tall cannot walk through the arch. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the last question. Okay. Describe the value of c for which the equation x squared plus 10x plus c equals 0 has two real solutions, one real solution and two non-real solutions. The equation has two real solutions when c is less than 25. The equation has one real solution when c equals 25. And the equation has two non-real solutions when c is greater than 25. Okay? All right. And the reason being is we know that this is a, this is b, this is the c value. Okay? The discriminant we know is equal to b squared minus 4ac. Okay? So the discriminant is b value is 10, so that's 10 squared minus 4 times a, which would be 1, times c, which is 25. Okay? All right, so we put that in decimals. So 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 25 is 0. Okay? So when c is 25, the discriminant equals 0. So then that's one real solution. Okay? Now, it says when it's less than 25. So now, okay, this is when c equals 25. Okay? Now, let's do when c is less than 25. So let's pick an obvious number, 24. Okay? So d equals 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 24. And you can pick any number less than 25. I just picked 24. Okay, so now come over here, change this to 24. Okay, and we get equals 4. Okay, so the d value is equal to 4, which is greater than 0, which is positive, so it has two real solutions. Okay, now let's look at when c is greater than 25. Okay, so then obviously 26 would make the most sense. So d equals 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 26. Okay, so let's put that into here. And that'd be a negative 4. Okay, so since d equals negative 4, which is less than 0, we know that it has two non-real solutions. Okay, all right. So with that, if you would finish up your assignment and have a wonderful Wildcat day.